Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review You Might Be the Killer. It's summer camp. What'd you expect?
Directed by Brett Simmons, starring Alyson Hannigan, Fran Kranz, Brittany S, Jenna Harvey, and Brian Price, who plays Steve, the Kayak King. Before we even say the synopsis of this film, it's important to let you know that there are unavoidable spoilers, even in the whole concept and idea of the movie. So if you feel like you need to watch the movie first, definitely stop watching this video. Otherwise, I'm gonna go into the synopsis and there's going to be a major spoiler right off the bat. This movie's about Sam. He's the head counselor of a summer camp which has a dark past. There's a legend of a haunted mask. Anyone who wears this mask becomes a serial killer. Unfortunately, Sam is that guy.
Oh my God.
What?
I'm the killer.
He wears the mask and it takes over just like Jim Carrey, but unlike Jim Carrey, he is murdering people instead of throwing down a machete and doing the conga line with them. Thankfully, Sam has a best friend in Chuck, played by Alyson Hannigan, who works at a comic store and is a big horror nerd and understands the meta of horror movies. And she tries to talk him through all of the situations and hopefully get him out alive without killing any more of his friends. This is one of those movies that was recommended a ton to us on Twitch, on YouTube, and then recently, Scott Beller from our Patreon, he was number 2. I'm like, you know what, we'll just do this as well as Overlord. So what do we like?
It is impossible these days to make a satire for horror movies. We've seen so many fail. This film nailed it.
If you're a fan of movies like Tucker and Dale or Leslie Vernon, then you're going to enjoy this movie because it's very meta. It was completely unique and enjoyable. Fran Kranz does an excellent job as like the lead character, and I think he was the perfect role for it as well. To make an innocent person a serial killer just by putting on a mask, I think that's brilliant. And his counterpart, Alyson Hannigan,
You chopped his head in half?
Yeah.
she crushed it. She's just a very likable person in general, and it's kind of cool because you see somebody who's a fan of horror movies. You can see her excitement, like, oh shit, my best friend's a killer. Oh, finally, my knowledge is coming to fruition. I can use this somehow. And so the whole dynamic between the two is just super enjoyable.
And on top of that, Sam's character, the way that he looks, when he has the mask on, he's a very menacing serial killer. And the sword or knife, whatever it is that he's using, is awesome.
And with a good slasher, which this is, it still has some great kills. And they're almost all practical effects. We have people getting their necks sliced, their stomachs getting ripped open, and even heads getting sliced in half vertically. And it all looks great. Now, I know this seems like a spoiler, but the way that the movie is kind of laid out, it's like the timeline jumps back and forth. So you know that everybody's gonna die because right at the beginning, you know that Sam is only there with 2 or 3 other people, but we have 7 to 8 other camp counselors that obviously need to die.
This is like the one time where the film starts off with the end of the movie and then we see what happens and it works. And it's just funny because like the number count will be at like 6 kills and then you flash back to where everyone's alive and it counts down to like 0 and it just shows each number as it's going along. So it spoils itself, but at the same time, it's hilarious and they know they're self-aware of this situation.
And while we can't point them all out, there are tons of references to other horror films without being like overbearing and saying, hey, look, we know horror movies. This one actually did that well. There's a handful of shots that are directly lifted from other horror films that I'm certain most of you will recognize. The supporting cast was also very great. I mean, a lot of them didn't really have talking lines because they're just basically almost all fodder, but when they were around, they were believable as counselors or they were having fun with it, and it seemed like, okay, well that guy's gonna die because the only time he's ever shown is because he's in this weird situation. And then there's another lot of people that are like, which one is the final girl? And that's kind of one of those fun things where it's like, wait, did they die? Did they really die? Was that neck slice legit or was it faked? And so you as an audience member are trying to figure out who's gonna be the final girl, even though the timeline's kind of jacked up.
We can't forget Steve, the Kayak King. He probably has one of the more dominant roles.
It can also be used for air guitar or as a golf You know, like a little club there, okay, guys?
And he did definitely remind me of my buddy Adam from Adam Does Movies.
The Troll Brigade did not win this time like they did with Ghostbusters, which was an amazing piece of cinematic art. It was a perfect movie in every way, and it was actually better than the original Ghostbusters.
Definitely check him out. He's great. We did a collab back in the day when he was Feud Nation. He really reminded me of him.
Everybody, we're gonna point and laugh at Sam, okay? He just fell in the water there.
So much. And Amani, the babe. The way that Sam sees Amani is exactly how the audience is gonna see Amani. It cuts to slow motion and you're like, oh, well, who's this?
Or like when you're trying to like give the counselors their shirts and she just takes hers and puts it on like right in front.
You're
just
gonna do it right
stutter
here? Are you fucking kidding me? So it's also fun that there are like little situations like that, like subplots with a little romance story between Amani and Sam. And then you also have the tension between Chuck and Sam, and you're like, is Chuck gonna give like the wrong information so that Amani is out of the picture, or what's her game? You never know. And one last thing, this has to have one of the best original songs for the credit roll.
We've been having so much fun. This night's been fun. Don't think about what we've done. You might be the killer.
I absolutely loved it. It was so good. Shout out to Harlow. Now, what didn't we like? Well, it wasn't an issue for me necessarily. I think that some people might be thrown off by the way that the movie is structured because it's very unnatural. There's a lot of flashbacks and going back and forth between the timeline that it could frustrate people. Thankfully, we enjoyed it, but there's definitely going to be an audience that if you are not a fan of things like Memento, then you might be pissed off at certain situations. Now it's time for our final thoughts and ratings. You Might Be the Killer is certainly a spoiler in its name. However, it was an excellent meta horror movie and one that was extremely well done. They knew the genre inside and out. There were great practical effects. The killer was great, and Sam and Chuck had a great dynamic between them that made the movie so fun and enjoyable to jump between the unique timeline that we saw in this one. It was just back and forth trying to decipher what happened and watching Sam trying to deal with like, oh shit, I killed this person and this is how I killed that person. And there's not a lot that you can complain about this movie. Like, it's genuinely just a good time. So if you like slashers and you're familiar with the genre, and I assume if you're watching our video, you are, then you're probably gonna like this. So I'm gonna give it 4 steak pits out of 5.
Holy shit, Jamie. Did you just do that? Good job. You guys dig a lot of holes?
We have had a lot of misses when it comes to people thinking that they're meta or they can satire the classic slasher. This film does it. They do a fantastic job. They nail it with their characters, they nail it with the humor, and they nail it with the kills. We get everything you could ask for in a comedy slasher. You have really good and well thought out jokes. You have amazing practical effects in our kills, and we have great chemistry on screen with all of our characters. But it's a really fun film, and considering that it's repeat action because it's constant flashbacks, I'm not tired of seeing it. They really did no wrong. They did a good job satiring the genre. So with that being said, I give this film 5 fake out campfire killers out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, there are links in the description where you can find it. And we take your recommendations into consideration while watching films. While this was nearly directly influenced by Patreon, it was also influenced by the masses that continue to spam the comments with what you want to see. So we encourage you to continue doing that, and we will continue to showcase your recommendations when we can. So thank you very much. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay updated with everything Bloodbath and beyond.